Little and Broken, but Still Good, by Wicked Writer on AO3. Episode 18, Chapter 18. The wooden bench was hard on Shouta's back. He sat uncomfortably on the thin padding seat, but it didn't do much to cushion the ancient bench that lined the waiting area of the courtroom. His tie felt too tight against his throat, but Hizashi insisted they all dressed nicely for today. The suit was too scratchy, the shoes were stiff. He felt like his mind was racing, all at the small irritations. So he distracted himself by watching the closed door instead. Lots of people had come in and out of the courtroom today, but he was waiting for Itoshi, who had insisted he wanted to go in alone. Even if no one understood why, they supported him and decided to wait out here. He could hear Eri giggling from where she played on the floor with Hizashi. Luckily, they had enough sense to pack a few games to keep her entertained, since they didn't know how long they were supposed to be here. Hopefully, it would be all over soon. So, Mr. Aizawa, how long does this usually take? Kaminari asked from where he was seated next to him, looking equally uncomfortable in his own suit, although Shouta questioned the bright yellow and black striped tie he wore. The young boy had been very sweet to Itoshi over the past few months. He had listened to the entire time that Itoshi spent explaining what he was doing and why. In the process, he opened up about the treatment he received from Nakio his entire life, always remembering that if he wasn't there, then his mom would still be alive, having to deal with a father who was in and out of rehab, barely having enough money to cover the necessities. It was more than what he really opened up to Shouta about. But Kaminari had just listened, gave him a hug when he needed it, and didn't judge him. It varies. Depends on how many different cases the judge has to see today, and where Hitoshi is in that order. He answered. Oh. Kaminari looked down at his feet. I'm really proud of him for going through with this. Me too. There was an awkward moment of silence. Kaminari looked as if he was going to ask something, but wasn't sure how. He looked up at Shouta. There was a hint of temptation in his expression. Can I ask you a question? Shouta just nodded. If Hitoshi's emancipation things gets approved, does that mean he's going to break up with me? What? Shouta couldn't understand where that question came from. I mean, like, I want it to get approved. He's been working so hard, and I know that's what he really wants. But I'm just worried since he would technically be an adult. That would be illegal for us to be together. So, does that mean we have to break up? Shouta paused for a moment to process his question before chuckling. While he knew that Kaminari wasn't exactly the brightest, he was still a sweet kid. He'll be legally an adult, but his age doesn't change. You guys are fine. With that, his whole demeanor changed. He smiled brightly, thanking Shouta before hopping off the bench to go to where Hizashi and Eri were playing a card game. While he watched the three of them play their game, Shouta couldn't help but think how his life had changed so dramatically in what felt like such a short time. It was nearly 2 years ago that Shouta had to drag Eri to start school. She was so frightened of being separated from Shouta, and if he was being honest, so was he. They went from just the two of them, with Emmy coming around to help when she could, to their little family of 4. Emmy and Amuri would show up every once in a while to spend time with them, shower them with gifts, get the kids hyped up on sugar before leaving. While Shouta was irritated they would rile them up, he knew that they were loving aunties. Now with Kaminari in the mix, practically being adopted like another brother by Eri, he was surprised at how much their little family had grown. Luckily, only 20 more minutes passed before Hitoshi walked out of the doors, a grin plastered on his face, giving away the results before anyone could ask. I got approved. He practically shouted as he reached the small group. Eri was the first to hug him. While Shouta wasn't exactly sure she understood what was happening, she knew she was happy for him, and that Hitoshi was going to be around permanently. Congratulations! Hizashi gave him a hug as well. I'm so proud of how brave you are. Kaminari was up next, The moment he released Eri and Hisashi, he threw his arms around Hitoshi and kissed him excitedly. When they broke apart, Hitoshi had a small blush across his nose. "I'm so happy for you, babe." Shouta waited until everyone was finished hugging and congratulating him. When they finally had a moment to look at each other, Hitoshi looked like he wanted to say something, but was having trouble forming words. He paused, giving him a moment to gather his thoughts. "Thank you," Hitoshi finally said, "for everything over the years. I can't... You have no idea." Tears formed in his eyes, and Shouta could feel the same thing happening to him. But Hitoshi took a deep breath before continuing. "You saved me. I don't know what my life would have been like without you, and I hope I can still be part of your family." "You always have been." Shouta wrapped him in a hug, feeling him break down and allowing those tears to be shed. "And to show you that you will always be..." Shouta grabbed the envelope from the bench and handed it over. With all the paperwork they had to take this morning, he probably didn't even notice the extra that Shouta had brought with him. For a moment, Hitoshi looked curious, but opened it up. "Is this..." He couldn't finish the question as he read over the papers he was handed. "I'm leaving it up to you, if you want to. We can mail the adoption application and you'll finally be my son. Or you can choose not to. But either way, you aren't leaving this family." Hitoshi broke down at that moment. He jumped into Shota's arms, tears streaming down his face. While he tried to speak, Shouta couldn't understand his words, but understand that this was a lot for him. His entire life, he had never had a father who cared for him. Now, he was given the chance at that, and it was, understandably, overwhelming. After a few moments, he finally pulled away from Shouta, looking a little tired, but happy. "Can we mail it on the way home?" Hitoshi asked. "Of course we can." He looked over at the paperwork once more before folding it back into the envelope. "I notice there's only one application," Hitoshi remarked as he clutched the letter to his chest. "You didn't file one out, Sashi?" The question surprised Shouta, and if the look on Hisashi's face gave anything away, he was just as surprised. There was a conversation that hadn't come up yet. Sure, they've been living together for a few months, but Shouta thought it may still be too early in the relationship to think about such things. Maybe one day in the future, Hisashi would think about adopting the kids. Not that he had to. Even if they continued to stay together, Shouta would never put him in a position where he felt like he had to adopt them. It was only if he wanted to. But again, that was something to think about a long time in the future. "Just me," Shouta answered. "We can talk about it later, though. Perhaps if we ever decide to get married, or something." "You and Sashi are getting married?" Eri asked way too loudly, drawing a few people's attention in the waiting area. "No," Shouta covered quickly. "No, I just said if. But we haven't talked about that at all." He hoped that Hisashi wouldn't panic at the statement. They never got the chance to talk about if they ever wanted to get married, or if what they had was good enough. Not to mention the question about the kids. Any sane person would probably have run off from this conversation instead. Hisashi laughed, slinging one arm around Shouta to kiss his temple. "Like I don't already have your proposal planned out," he said cheekily. If it was possible, Shota's jaw would have hit the floor. "You what?" "Yep, got the ring and everything too," Hisashi confessed. "But you have to act surprised when it actually happens, okay?" "What?" "Don't worry about it." Hisashi picked up Eri and slung the bag with her stuff over his shoulder. "Come on, I'll buy everyone dinner on the way home." He started scrolling out the door, Hitoshi and Kaminari following behind, but Shouta stood for a moment, trying to process what happened. "When did you get a ring?" "Happy anniversary, Shou." Hisashi raised his glass of champagne. "Happy anniversary, Sashi." Shouta mirrored the gesture, tapping their glasses together. It had been a year since they first started dating. Hisashi insisted on taking him back to the bistro they went on their first date. It was nice to see it was still in business after all this time, and it seemed to be busy as ever. Luckily, Hisashi had enough foresight to call ahead for a reservation. He was actually sweet enough to make all the arrangements. Hitoshi left to go to Midoriya's house, and he made sure to promise that Kaminari wouldn't be spending the night as well. As much as he liked Hitoshi's boyfriend, he was still an overprotective father. He remembered what it was like to be a teenage boy, and didn't want to give them too much alone time together. They dropped off Eri at her first sleepover before heading over to dinner. As nervous as he was for Eri to be spending the night elsewhere, other than their apartment complex, he had gotten to know Mai's parents over the 2 years that they've been in school, and knew she would be fine. Plus, he promised to make sure his phone volume was all the way up, so if she needed him, she could call at any time and he'll be there. This was the first time that the two of them had a night all to themselves since their first date, and Shouta was looking forward to it. Not that he didn't want the kids around, but sometimes he wondered if Hizashi ever felt like he was missing out on having a normal relationship. They never got to go away for a weekend trip on a whim, or decide to sit at the beach talking until the sun rose, or other things that typical couples would do when dating. Every plan they made had to center around the kids, either making arrangement for babysitting or planning for an activity they would enjoy as well. He worried that Hizashi may one day regret it all. But of course, he never given any indication of that. Instead, it seemed to bring them closer together. They worked surprisingly well as a team. Hizashi didn't miss a beat as he stepped into the family, worrying about the kids just as much as Shouta did. It was nice to have someone to rely on with the oftentimes overwhelming domesticity of family life. He was able to help pick up the pieces that Shouta couldn't, while those thoughts of wanting to be a regular couple never seemed to disappear completely. It faded the more they felt like a family. "This is nice," Shouta spoke as they sipped their champagne. "We don't get to be alone often together." "Yeah," that's all she smiled. "A little quiet, though, without the little ones." Shouta chuckled. "We should do something this summer, all together." It's all she stated, avoiding eye contact as he was shy about something, a rarity when it came to him. I mean, this time next year, Hitoshi's gonna be getting ready for college, so it would be nice to do something as um, together, as a family. Should have questioned, watching the sheepish smile appear on Hisashi's face. "I would love that." They finished their dinner, suggesting ideas that they could do this summer as a family. Eventually, they finished dinner, promising they would figure out something at another time so they could head back home. The walk back was relaxing, neither moving at a hurried pace as they cut through the park hand in hand. When they eventually made it back home, Hisashi paused at the door. "Could you wait here for a moment? I have a surprise." Shouta felt a little dumbfounded. He figured that the dinner was the plans for their anniversary. He nodded and watched as Hisashi disappeared into the apartment, leaving him alone in the hallway, wondering what was happening behind the door. While he stood there, he decided to shoot off a couple texts. May's mom confirmed that the girls were having fun, playing with one of the new toy sets that Mai just got. Hitoshi sent back a picture of him and Midoriya playing some fighting superhero game with what looked like to be several empty soda cans and a bag of chips laying around. Knowing that both of his kids were enjoying a normal childhood warmed Shota's heart in more ways than he could have imagined. After a couple moments, the door to the apartment opened again. Hisashi stood with his hair down, suit jacket and tie already discarded, and a few buttons undone. He reached a hand out which Shouta gladly accepted, pulling him into the apartment. In the short time he'd been out there, Hisashi scattered candles around the apartment, bathing it in a warm glow, making it feel so much more intimate. There was a plate of chocolate-covered strawberries, and 2 glasses with a bottle of wine sitting at the coffee table. Taking a moment to slip his shoes off at the door, Shouta gathered his thoughts. This was one of the sweetest things someone had ever done for him. Before he got the chance to say something, Hisashi slipped behind Shouta, pulling him into his chest. Shouta barked into the comfort of Hisashi's arms wrapped around his waist. "I know it's nothing fancy," Hisashi stated, "but I wanted to do something special for you." "Hisashi, this is perfect." Shouta twisted in his arms enough to plant a kiss on his lips. He guided Shouta to sit on the couch, before pouring each of them a glass of wine. "What is this all about?" Shouta asked as he took a sip of wine. It was deep red that tasted like it was probably expensive. "I'm not good at making big gestures," Hisashi admitted. It was hard to tell in the dim light, but there seemed to be a slight blush along his cheeks. But I wanted to do this for you. All at once, Shota's heartbeat picked up. It had been over a month since Satoshi's emancipation, when Hisashi let it slip that he was already planning his proposal. With their anniversary happening, the romantic date, the setup with drinks and dessert, now seemed like the perfect time for Hisashi to pop the question. While he knew in the back of his mind that Hisashi wanted to, based on his previous comment made, he didn't imagine it would be so soon. Looking down at his drink, Shouta tried to see if there was something hidden in it, but he didn't see anything in the dark liquid. Shouta. Hisashi grabbed his free hand. This past year has been the happiest I've ever been. I can't imagine my life without you. Shouta swallowed, unable to say anything. I love you. Hisashi leaned forward, kissing him briefly before pulling away. Happy anniversary. I look forward to so many more with you. I love you too. Shouta found his voice. He watched with anticipation as Hisashi reached for the plate, but was a little disappointed when he picked up one of the strawberries and offered it to Shouta. With his mind still reeling, he didn't register taking a bite of the fruit until he could taste the sweet juice on his tongue. It seemed to pull him out of his thoughts. He wanted to be here with Hisashi at this moment. He pushed the thoughts from his mind so he could fully be present. Seemingly unaware of the moment Shouta had, Hisashi finished the rest of the strawberry, licking his fingers clean. After setting down the glass, Shouta rearranged them so Hisashi was sitting across his lap. This gave Shouta the perfect position to hold Hisashi close as they continued taking turns eating the fruit. Shota's eyes tracked a drop of juice sliding down Hisashi's wrist when he took a bite of one of the berries. Without much thought, Shouta gripped his wrist gently and allowed his tongue to trail up the skin. He could hear Hisashi's breathing quicken as he swallowed the bite he took. Continuing on this path, Shouta traced the sticky, sweet trail along his palm, ending with the taking 2 fingers into his mouth. He sucked gently, causing Hisashi to whimper ever so slightly. When he finally pulled away, Shouta didn't hesitate to catch his lips onto Hisashi's. He must have been thinking the same thing because he surged forward, meeting Shouta halfway. One of his hands tangled in Hisashi's hair, anchoring him in place, as the kiss turned more heated. Shouta didn't think he would ever get tired of this, kissing Hisashi, holding him, allowing his hand to drip up his chest. The small moans and gasps always encouraged him more. Shouta followed Eri and Hitoshi as they tried to find the perfect spot for a picnic. He thought it was a little odd that both kids had insisted on making lunch to celebrate his and Hisashi's anniversary, which was a few days ago, but didn't say anything against it. If they wanted to do something for them, then he wouldn't complain. It was nice not being the one in charge for a change. The memories of this park flooded his mind as the kid found a spot right underneath a shaded tree. It was the same park where Shouta and Eri had invited Hisashi to join them, even though they had both agreed to keep some distance between them at that point. It seemed like both were content in making up excuses to be around each other. Hitoshi set out a blanket, with Eri trying to help, although her helping was basically just pulling on one corner to straighten it out, then immediately tipping over it while going for a second corner. After a moment, they got it set up, and Hisashi thanked them before setting out the containers he brought. The 3 of them had gone to great lengths to create this entire setup without letting Shouta know what was going on. Something about wanting to do something for him since he's usually the one to take care of everyone. Come here, Sho. Hisashi extended a hand, which he promptly took to sit next to him. They sat together, exchanging conversations as a family. Hitoshi talked about which colleges he was thinking about. After all, he would start applying for them in just over a year, and he didn't really have a clue on what he wanted to study after high school. Eri insisted that he picked something close so she could still see him often. There were times she still complained about not seeing Mirio, but whenever he had a break and would visit his family, he would often drop by to see Eri. But she still didn't think that was enough. Are you and Kaminari looking at the same schools? Shouta asked. There are a few we both are looking at, and a few that I am just looking at, Hitoshi admitted. I'm not sure what we're going to do, though. Well, as a teacher, I feel I'm obligated to say that you shouldn't base your higher education around a high school sweetheart. Hisashi's tone sounded a little protective, but his smile softened. But on the other hand, he is a good kid, and that makes you happy. We will support you with whatever you decide. Shouta added. Sometimes distance can be good. It can be a little rough at times, but maybe it can give you each some space to figure out what kind of person you are. You may have to work a little harder at keeping each other as a significant part of your life, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. What if we drift apart? Hitoshi sounded so worried about something that was still far off into the future. What if you don't? Hisashi answered. We don't know what will happen in the future, but you shouldn't let those worries overwhelm you now. You two can deal with it if that happens, and just know that you always have your family to help. Shouta said. Before I could get too emotional, Hitoshi changed the subject, asking about summer plans. They didn't have too much planned as of yet, but they started to come up with a few ideas. There was an upcoming festival that Shouta knew Eri and Hisashi would love. Once the food was gone, Eri started to get a little antsy. Can I play? She pointed at the playground that wasn't too far away from where they had set up their picnic. Just stay where we can see you. Wait, Eri. Hitoshi sounded a little panicked for a moment, which made Shouta on edge. He never sounded like this unless something bad was about to happen. A quick scan of the area showed that everything looked okay. Sure, there were people in the park, but mostly kids playing in the jungle gym or people walking around the large pond in the center. Nothing that should warrant this type of response. We have the thing, remember? For a second, Eri just looked at him confused, but understanding dawned on her face, and she nodded intently. Shouta looked at Hisashi for clarification, but he shrugged, looking just as confused as he felt. Hitoshi reached into his pocket of his jacket and pulled out 2 pieces of paper before handing one over to Eri. When he nodded at her, Eri stood up, facing Shouta and Hisashi, who sat side by side on a blanket. We wanted to give you a gift for your anniversary, but thought that writing these letters would be better, Hitoshi explained. I'll let Eri go first. She cleared her throat as if she was trying to command attention of an entire audience, not just the 2 of them. Daddy, thank you for everything you have done. You're the best daddy in the whole world, and I'm happy you chose me to be your daughter. She nodded with such conviction that Shouta couldn't help but chuckle. In just the past 2 years, she had come out of her shell entirely and had proven to be a fierce young lady. Sashi, you make my daddy so happy. He never said anything, but he was so sad before he met you. But he isn't sad anymore, and neither am I. I love you and Daddy so much. Happy anniversary. The letter was short and sweet, much like Eri herself, but Shouta was so touched at the thoughtfulness she had put into it. She ran up to give them both a hug, which they gladly returned tenfold. She settled down between them, as Hitoshi stood with his own letter, letting out a shaky breath. He started to read. I know I had once said that you saved my life, but I never got a chance to tell you how. Growing up, I was always told that I took too much space, too much time, or energy. That I was just a burden that shouldn't exist. But the moment I set foot into your home, I found the opposite was true. You welcomed me every time I ended up there, always making sure I was okay, fed, and had all my stuff for school. I saw glimpses into a life that I wish I had been granted from the start. Being part of this family saved me from a bleak future I saw for myself. Dad. His voice cracked on the last word. Obviously, he was trying to hold back his emotion, but was failing. Shouta stood up and wrapped him into a hug, trying to express his gratitude. Sorry, Hitoshi apologized, before gently pushing Shouta to take half a step back. Stay there, so I can finish before I start crying. Shouta smiled, but obliged. Dad, thank you is not enough for all that you have done for me, but it's all I can give right now. Sashi, in a way, I think you saved my dad as well. Shouta could hear him shuffle, probably getting ready to hug Hitoshi when he was done, but remained behind him. I can see how much you've changed him, too. He smiles more, for one thing. And most importantly, you helped him create this little family that I'm so grateful we are a part of. Hitoshi made eye contact with Shouta again. He could see the unshedded tears, but there was a smile dancing behind them as well. You were the first person that I ever wanted to call Dad. The only one I thought would be worthy of that title. but I hope you don't mind if I ask you to share it. Shouta looked a little puzzled, but didn't interrupt. You said that we could have a discussion about adoption if you and Hizashi get married, and I would love to have a second dad who's just as wonderful as you. So, I guess we just need your answer. For a moment he was confused. When the meaning sunk in, Shouta froze, as his heart beat a mile a minute. There was no way he was actually meaning what it sounded like. Hitoshi pointed behind Shouta. Slowly, he turned around. Hizashi was already on one knee with a ring sitting in a small box, a smile across his face that took Shota's breath away. He always known that Hizashi was a son, bright, beautiful, and radiating enough warmth to make Shouta feel like he was unthawing from the isolation he kept himself in throughout his life. Now it was too overwhelming. His brightness made Shouta felt like he was unworthy of all of this, but he knew that Hizashi would not allow him to say such things. At every opportunity he had, Hizashi showed him how much he cared and loved Shouta, how much he cared and loved their family. Will you marry me? Even through his calm demeanor, there was a shake to his tone. Yes, Shouta spoke, matching his shaky voice. Of course I will, Sashi. Eri squealed with delight as she hugged Shota's leg. Hitoshi was quick enough to pick her up, hugging her to his chest and telling her to wait a moment. It took a bit for Hizashi to place the ring on his finger, hands trembling slightly. As soon as he stood, Shouta wrapped him in a hug, never wanting to let go. Eventually they parted ways, enough for Shouta to pull Hitoshi and Eri into the hug as well. I helped pick out the ring, Eri proudly announced as she pointed to it on Shota's finger. It was a beautiful deep black band, with some type of red jewel strapped down the middle, around encircling this ring. I saw it at the jewelry store and said it reminded me of you. You did a wonderful job, little listener. Hizashi praised her. Shouta held on to them when the overwhelming realization hit him. Paperwork and blood relation wasn't what made a family. Shouta knew this more than anyone. It was the need to be together, the bonds they shared to help them find their way in life that made a family. They helped him find what he wanted most in life. This was his family, the one he never had growing up. It took his entire life to find them, but in the end, it was worth the wait. It's over. No, I'm sad. It's over. God damn it. Okay, if you don't already listen to any of my other videos and you really, really loved this found family kind of thing, there's another found family, what's it called? Thick that I'm doing, a series that I'm doing that is really long and it's not going to end anytime soon. I think we still have like a good couple, three months with this one. No, probably more if I'm being honest. 3-4 months with this one, right? We still have it for a while, which is just trying to survive and learn to love along the way by Foreplay on AO3. It's really good. It's Eraser Mike adopts Izuku Midoriya. It's pretty fast-paced in the adoption era and the, that era and stuff. So, for the most part, it's a lot of, cutesy moments and some angst and stuff. But I loved this one. The little and broken, but still good. Wicked writer, you did such a great job. I loved it. I enjoyed it. There was a smutty part that I skipped. There wasn't anything important that I feel important to say. It was just a bunch of, smutty parts and, them profounding their love for each other and stuff like that. And, a little banter here and there, which was really cute and adorable. I really like the way you write smut. YouTube doesn't, though. So that's why it's not here. YouTube hates you, apparently. YouTube hates your writing. That's a thing. YouTube hates writing, apparently. Hi, YouTube. Fuck YouTube. I'm sorry, YouTube. Please don't smite me down again. I'm sorry. But moving on. This was so cute. It was such a cute little thing. I loved it so much. It was adorable. It was wonderful. It was amazing. I'm so sad that it's over, but it's definitely gonna probably go into my rereads. It's definitely gonna be ones that I'm gonna be recommending to people. I have certain things that I recommend over on my TikTok, and I have a whole list of fan fictions that I have read on my free time or in this channel that I then recommend. For the most part, if I read it on the channel, I recommend it on the TikTok. But this is definitely one that even if I read it by myself, I would definitely recommend it. Because on all the fan fictions that I read, I will recommend. I do hold up to a standard. If I don't think that it suits that standard, it ain't gonna go. I'm sorry. You're not cutting it. Even if I podfic it. I think even if I podfic it, I'm like, yeah, no, you're not cutting it. No. But for the most part, I've podficked a bunch of good ones. I think this one's great. I think this one's probably gonna go in my bookmarks, if I'm being honest. Definitely gonna go in my bookmarks. I love it. It's definitely, it being in my bookmarks is such a high staple as well. So, yeah. So the next one that's gonna come over, the next series that's gonna take over this one is going to be the fan fiction of the Devil's Blue. The Devil Blues. The Devil Blues. There you go. I'm just gonna read the summary. The 78th Precinct Police Captain, Toshi Yagi, had volunteered his squad to help implement the mayor's wish of increasing the successful cooperation between the city police and active pro-heroes. Each detective is to be assigned a pro-hero who will shadow them for 2 weeks. And the operation had been dubbed the Station Operation. Although it is not well received by those individuals, Izuku Midoriya, current detective at the 78th Precincts and loyal follower of Captain Toshinori's ideals, believes that the operation will be a success. If his captain says it will succeed, then there is no doubt in Izuku's mind that it will. That is until he meets his assigned pro-hero. So, really interesting. Additional tags being Police Detective AU, woo! Quirkless Midoriya Izuku, Alternative Universe, Station Corporation Operation, Strangers to Lovers, Quirkless All Might. Oh, Police Captain All Might, Quirkless All Might. Ooh, okay. Wait, hold up. I didn't read that tag when I first saw this, which is a very interesting premise. Rating. Why is it explicit? Hold up. Why is the rating explicit? What? I really hope there's no smut. It's not labeled smut. I hope it's just explicit because it is police and they're probably gonna deal with gruesome stuff. I hope that's why. Why is it explicit? Hold up. Hold up. Also, what the fuck is that username? Oh, I'm gonna die pronouncing that each day. But what? Why is it? It's not labeled smut, so there's no label of smut or sexual content or anything. It's just explicit. Explicit doesn't mean that it has to have smut, right? Just because it's labeled explicit doesn't mean it has to be smutty, right? Right? Well, explicit just means it's only suitable for adults. Maybe it's just really graphic. In the sense of gore. What? Let's just hope there's not smut. It's not tagged. So, I don't think there is. It's not tagged. Okay, so maybe it's really brutal, right? Maybe it's just really gruesome. Like, maybe, like, some people get skinned or some shit. I really hope people get skinned. That is a weird sentence, and that's definitely going in the things Echo has said. As always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day. Link to the server and my socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching. There it is again with me forgetting my own outro.